Thanks.
Okay, I have just one more question in the chat from Ron. And Ron, do you just want to ask your question verbally?
Yes, I am here. Yeah, so my question was, are there any systems that do not use the third-party administrators so that the stratas can manage the systems themselves and avoid that that user charge?
There are systems. We generally don't recommend them, only because strata councils change from time to time, and when somebody decides to say, okay, I'll manage the charging system, and then a new council comes on board and they say, why are we managing a charging system? Like, this is insane. Well, now you got a system that can't be monitored by a third party, and you're kind of out of luck. So in the end, okay, again, this is just speaking from experience, not, I don't live in a strata, so this is just from experience with hundreds of strata councils, is that somebody at the end of the day is going to do the work. It's either a third party company, which is hands off, and you kind of have legal kind of waiver where you're saying, look, if you don't believe us, we'll give a report showing that we've collected enough money to offset the cost of energy. Or you can do it yourself, or strata management can do it, or building staff. But in the end, somebody's going to do it. So it's going to be a volunteer council member, or it's going to be a paid building staff or strata management. But somebody's got to do all the account reconciliation, the user management, the complaints, the criticisms, the enforcement issues, collecting money, all those type of things. So in the end, somebody ends up doing the work. We recommend it's just easier and more simple and effective to do it with a third party. But again, totally council's decision to do it. There are systems you can put in, dumb systems that just don't have any kind of monitoring capabilities. We still recommend putting in a system that can monitor, even if you just charge a flat fee, to make sure that when challenged, and we do have buildings that have been challenged legally, saying, can you prove that I'm not subsidizing somebody charging their vehicle in my building? If you don't have a method to prove it, you are kind of liable to have to come up with some kind of method to ensure that nobody's subsidizing other people's usage of common power. So again, just from experience, not from any, we can design a system in pretty well anyway. It's just those cautions to kind of take in mind.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and not seeing any other questions right now, I'm going to ask one of my own, which is the kind of technical charging system was very clear, but I'm not too clear on the business model that you do represent, and that's kind of what Ron was touching on. Like, how does it? Do you normally monitor all of those systems and have a long-term arrangement with everybody when you do this?
Did you brush your teeth?
I'm trying to find out who's
I'll find it
in the background there. Maybe it's can't. Okay. So could you explain a little bit? Sorry, I got distracted by the background there, but could you describe what kind of arrangements you make with condos in terms of the long-term management of the system? Are you always involved in the system beyond the installation in terms of the management? And does your company take a fee to manage that system? Presumably, if you're doing the work that you described, the other people don't want to do, like the board probably doesn't want to do it, the condo doesn't want to do it themselves. Are you doing that, and what's that arrangement?
Yeah. No, basically what we do is we do the installation. We do the, basically information sessions and, give different options and whatnot. But in the end, once the installation is done and we've installed the chargers and commissioned them, then regardless whether it's like Flow or ChargePoint or Unico Power or Hypercharge, we basically introduce the strata to the service provider, and then the service provider signs a monitoring agreement with the strata board. And then the relationship for them, like managing users and collecting fees and everything, is between the third-party service provider, whoever that is, and directly with the strata. At that time, we fall back into the service. So if if they can't remotely correct the problem with one of the chargers or some kind of issue, they would dispatch us on a service call that we'd go and look at the charger and see what's wrong. But after, you know, after installation, basically the relationship is between the third-party service provider and the Strata Council.
Right. So your company isn't intending to get into that business, strictly the installation and servicing of these systems. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. I had one very small question that you referred to a wheel stop, and I didn't understand what that was or where it's located in the parking stall. Is that just something to stop the car from driving over the charger or slamming into the charger? What?
Yeah, exactly. It just basically most of the electrical code or building code says you need some type of mechanical protection, meaning somebody can't bang into it. So it's either a bollard or a shroud that's around it protecting it. And we recommend just a wheel stop, but it's kind of like a parking barrier. A lot of time you see a concrete in public parking lots, concrete curb that you park
kind of like a curb. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We install that to protect the charger.
Right. And then there was one other thing I noted down, that you were talking about putting in 200 chargers, but just to be clear, and I think I know the answer to this, so I'm just trying to clarify it and make sure that we're all on the same page, that to be EV ready, you have to have a power run to 200, like if you got 200 units you have to have power available for 200 units, but you do not have to have chargers for 200 units. If only 10 people have cars, you put in the 10 chargers, but the electricity has to be available everywhere. And that means, I think, that there's just a junction box. It doesn't even have to be a plug ready to go. It just has to have a junction box with the power for that. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, correct on all those things.
Yeah.
And we also don't recommend putting in outlets or receptacles because, again, anybody could plug anything into that receptacle, and it's unmetered and unmonitored. So it's usually a junction box that's got live wires or a live terminal in it. But essentially, it's if there's 200 units in the building, there's 200 energized connections in the parking lot available for people when they want to install a charger.
And when the charger is put in, it would be hardwired into that junction box.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Any other questions? I'm just checking the top of the hands up.
There's one in chat.
Oh, from Don?
Yeah. No.
Do you want me to read that, or Don, do you want to just ask that yourself? Oh, right. Oh, there's another one in the chat here. Let me start with this one. Is one charger brand more reliable than another?
We'd say there are. I'd say most of the top brands, kind of like the recognizable brands, have similar build quality. As far as the chargers themselves, so I'd say they're mostly the same, and especially their functionality as chargers. Some of them vary in design. Some of them are plastic and some of them are metal. But essentially the build quality, I'd say, is very similar to most of the models available in Canada. There are some kind of second tier or ones you'd buy offline that are cheaper imports. But again, electronics are fairly simple in there. It's basically like a power bar, so fairly simple device. Really where they get complicated is when they have remote control and Wi-Fi, WAN connections, Wi-Fi or radio and meter and monitoring, those type of things. So that's where you kind of want to make sure you got a good quality one. But I'd say across the board, we see generally about 12 different solutions in Western Canada. I'd say they're all similar in quality.
I know Kent Rathwell's on the call, and I'd just like to say I'm very happy with my Sun Country charger that I have out in front of my house. But, so Don Chandler has a question in the chat, and Don, do you just want to give it yourself, or why don't you just even read it out?
I think that was just a comment on utility bill. If you look at your BC Hydro bill,
right,
there are fees, fees for covering things like payment processing, metering, billing, etc. And the service fees on management systems, very similar, cover the same thing. Nothing's free.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'd say when we do cost of energy analysis for a building, we basically take, you know, everything, including GST, divided by the total kilowatt hours and come up with an average cost. I think that in the Lower Mainland right now is 11.4 cents a kilowatt hour. But we do it building by building to say this is your actual cost, and then whatever the demand surcharge is. So the other thing about demand surcharges is a lot of smaller buildings might be on small general service in BC, which does not have demand surcharges on it. But as soon as you get a number of EVs in your building, like over a dozen, you're going to get bumped into the medium rate category, which automatically creates demand fees. And then when you get over 20 chargers in your building, you're going to be in the large general service category. So one benefit there is your energy cost actually goes down. So your cost per kilowatt hour goes down to just over 6 cents a kilowatt hour, but your demand fees go up to $12 a kilowatt. So if you're not driving demand fees, you're getting cheaper energy the more charges you're adding to a building. But if you're incurring demand surcharges, then it gets very expensive very quickly with EV charging.
I'll just interject here. I do see we have a couple more hands up. But just on that topic, we've had BC Hydro talking to us earlier this year about rejigging the way we're paying for electricity and having a special possible EV rate for people to charge EVs. Does that affect how you're looking at these things?
I think probably more the reason to kind of consider energy management as an option to be able to respond to how they do change those rate structures. I don't think it's any secret they want or they'll need to change that structure. It's just a lot of people, well, a lot of people are shocked that in a strata building you're paying peak demand fees. A lot of people assume it's kind of like residential single family homes where you just pay kind of in a tiered system. The more energy you use, the more you kind of tiered up. So the peak demand is a bit of a shocker sometimes. But I feel assured that they will change the rate structure down the road, and it'll get higher. And so if you have a system that can respond to that, that's probably going to be helpful. It's just hard to say how they're going to actually do it. We kind of monitor some of the other countries that are years ahead of British Columbia to kind of see what we might be looking at. But it's power pricing is a very politically charged a beast, so it's hard to say what'll actually come out the other end one day. Speaking of how they do it in other countries, we have Lawrence lined up, but first we have Lawrence is down in California, just so you know, but first hand up is Harvey again. So I see you put your question in the chat, Harvey, but why don't you just say it directly about?
Regarding who pays, is a strata corporation create a special levy to install everything, or does the individual owner that wants their parking spot charged or getting ready to charge for the future, the one to pay directly? Because I remember I did look at the website and it said that there doesn't have to be a special levy if the individual owners foot the bill for their own charging spot.
Yeah, I think there's a number of options for strata councils to use. One would be a special levy or some type of clawback to the owners, or using the CRF or as a line item capital cost type of thing. There is downloaded to the owners that sign up a certain amount of owners and they all pay kind of help pay the freight. Also, you can use the rebates, to try and offset some of those things. So there's a number of ways to do it. There is no real, secure way. I'd have to say up to about a year and a half ago, the vast majority, it was down to the EV owner having to pay for everything. And now there's a lot of, proposals that are going to SGMs and AGMs, and they're passing now with a majority vote, just because people are kind of getting behind having their buildings EV ready, so they're willing to spend that price. And given the rebates that are available, it's kind of a good time to kind of jump on board and make it happen now, and then you don't have to worry about it in the future. That's what we're seeing anyways.
Okay, thank you.
The next hand up is Lawrence. So Lawrence, go ahead.
Great. So my understanding is that EVSEs tell the car how many amps to draw, but I'm wondering, do even the cheapest EVSEs measure the current flowing through them? So if the car draws too much power, they disconnect, or do the cheaper ones just tell the car, and if the car draws too much, so be it?
Essentially how it works is the car determines how much energy it's actually going to take. The charger on the wall, if it's wired for say 32 amps, it'll just produce 32 amps. It has no idea what the car is doing. That technology might develop, but right now on the universal standards that are utilized on chargers, they don't actually control the car or have any effect on the car. So really it's up to the car to determine how long it's going to charge, what rate it's going to charge at, how it's going to use the energy available. So the device on the wall, unless it's actually controlled by like an EMS or something else, but the EMS still doesn't even know what the car needs or wants. It's just controlling the charger. And
so if the charger is told to dole out, say 8 amps, and it tells the car, yeah, I've got 8 amps, but the car malfunctions and takes 30 amps, is the charger going to shut down, or is it just going to dole out the 30 amps and not know it's doing that?
Well, when the car sees 8 amps, it just takes 8 amps. It only knows what's available to it. It doesn't actually have a preset, like I need 32, it's going to take 32. It's just going to throttle to whatever's available. So if you plug into a supercharger, it knows what energy is available, or a level 2 at, whether it's 40 amps or 32 or 16 amps, it'll just take 100% of what's available to it. And it'll utilize that power. It's not going to damage or blow anything in the car.
Right. Well, what I'm wondering is, say the car malfunctions, the charger says I've got 8 amps, and the car misunderstands, or somebody's got a dodgy charger in their car and the car takes 20 amps instead. What it does, is that recognized, and does the charger shut down, or does it just dole out the 20 amps because that's what the car is taking, which kind of screws up energy sharing between chargers?
It's kind of like a glass, a glass, and you're pouring water into it, and the glass says, I want more water. It can't get any more water because it's just whatever's pouring into the glass. So the car doesn't have the ability to kind of like back charge against the charger.
No, what I'm saying is the car usually determines how much power it draws based on the charger telling the car, we have this much available to you, right? You can set the charger to tell the car, hey, I've got 10 amps, I've got 32 amps. And if the car is obedient, it takes no more than what the charger says is available. But what I'm saying is, if the car malfunctions and takes more than what the charger says is available, my understanding is chargers, EVSEs, don't have any protection against that. And I'm wondering, is that the case?
That scenario, if I understand you properly, wouldn't cause a fault on the charger. It would cause a fault on the car, and the car would probably stop charging and go into error mode.
Well, the only fault on the charger is that if you ask the charger to tell the car to only draw 8 amps because it's sharing with a number of other cars on the circuit, and the car takes more than what you say is allowed, the charger isn't going to know it. And, I guess your current monitoring system will say, oh, there's more power being drawn than expected, and maybe, tell other cars to slow down their charge through the chargers. But I'm just wondering if that technology is there, where a charger says, hey, this car is being thirstier than it's supposed to be, I'm just going to shut it off.
The charger, if it's throttled down, say to 8, it'll provide 8 to the car, and the car will take 8. The car may want 30 or 50, but it'll take 8. It's designed to do that. There's no communication needed. It'll just take whatever's available. If it does malfunction, the car will go into, into kind of arrest mode. But I've never actually witnessed that theoretical problem. So I'm just saying that it's both the car is protected to make sure that it doesn't get, like, what would happen is if, say, the car had a maximum rate of, it could drop, say, 32, and the charger tried to give it 50, the car might fault out because it's being overloaded.
With the charger doesn't force current into the car. It gives a voltage and communicates to the car how many amps are available. And then the car, based on that, takes how much it wants, which if it's working properly is only up to what the charger is suggesting. But if there's a fault, it could take more than the charger is suggesting. And then I'm wondering, what the charger will do about it. And sounds like most chargers don't have current measuring and won't do anything about it. And they'll wait till the breaker pops or the plug overheats and the temperature sensor in the plug shuts it down, if there is one.
Well, I'm wondering if we can look at this problem from a different, from the other end. So there's an EMS system in these systems we're talking about, maybe not in your individual home charger, but if you have an EMS system, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce, but that EMS system is only going to provide 8 amps to the car or 2 amps to the car at peak time. And if the car says, give me 20, it's just not going to be there because the EMS system is what's gating it, not the charger. Am I right about that, Bruce?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so there is a current sensor in the charger that will shut the charger down if the car is drawing too much power.
I still not 100%. I apologize. I just not quite sure. I know you're talking theoretical, but I don't understand the theoretical question.
Would you like me to hop in here and explain it?
I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead, Kelly.
So in the example Lawrence is talking about, does happen with Teslas of all vehicles, where it might be offered 32 and they will take 33 amps. And some chargers will take that as a fault and will stop charging the car, saying that there's a problem with the car taking too much current. Flow used to do that and they disabled that feature because they had too many complaints. And so yes, that it's theoretical, but it really happens. The latest J1772 spec says it's optional for the charger to take corrective actions to deal with that vehicle.
Yeah, we've put in several thousand chargers. I've never personally witnessed that issue or had our technicians bring that issue forward. So I could certainly look into it. It's just not something I've come across. So.
I'm also thinking as the equipment gets older in cars and or people hack their equipment, that this could be an issue. There could just be a fault, but they say there's a dead short in the charger or a low resistance not even going into the battery, and just it draws more power than the charger says it can, and whether or not the charger shuts down or not. But particularly I'm thinking with the EMS, you measure the total current, but are you measuring the current to each car, or are you just telling the charger this is how much to give, and if a car draws more current then you have to trim it somewhere else?
It is measuring the output for each charger.
Oh, okay.
I guess I'm thinking of an extreme condition where, say, a car is in an underground garage and there's a flood and there could be a short. So that what happens in that case?
Well, I think cars would shut down, and also the system would shut down as well. The breakers would all trip, and the system would go down pretty quickly. And I'd say if you had a flood to that extent in your parkade, you'd have bigger problems than shorted out chargers. But yeah, I mean, they're very, they're very safe. I mean, I heard the horror stories of, battery fires in underground parkades or whatever, very few and far between, but, there's always accidents that happen. I always find it interesting that people are comfortable with 200 vehicles with 50 liters of gas in the tank, and people smoking in the parkade, but an electric vehicle causes a lot of concern. So it's just a matter of perspective, I believe. So
I would just like to add to that last scenario that all EVSEs have ground fault circuit interrupters. So if there's any leak to ground via water, that the GFCI pops and just shuts all the power down.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of protection on the faults. We could certainly bring an expert to talk on each of the fail safes, but these systems have been around a long time. We certainly haven't seen any problems. But as far as the technical analysis, we do a pretty thorough deep dive on things, but I don't do them myself. We have engineers and people that know what they're doing in that category. So could definitely speak to it if we wanted more of a technical talk, and certainly bring a few of our experts on to talk about that.
Okay, thank you very much. I think not seeing any more questions, I will shut the talk down now and just say thank you very much, Bruce and Sanjay, for coming today and giving us such an informative presentation. I think we all enjoyed it.
Awesome.
So thanks for being here.
Thank you
for
all.
the time.
See
Thank
you all
you.
on June 12th.
Yep. Thanks, Bruce.
Okay,
Thank
good
you.
night.
Thanks.